The respiratory system is a series of organs responsible for taking in oxygen throughout the body and expelling carbon dioxide out. Nares, or best known as nostrils, are the two external components that are the start of a person's nasal cavity. A person also has two additional nares at the end of the nasal cavity that connect to the pharynx. The mouth is the only other external component that is part of the respiratory system and is the other first part of the system along with the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity is the main external opening of the respiratory system and the very first part of it. The soft palate is found just above the nasal cavity and mouth and is composed of muscle and connective tissue. This palate is very flexible. When elevated for swallowing and sucking, it completely blocks and separates the nasal cavity and nasal portion of the pharynx from the mouth and the oral part of the pharynx. The epiglottis is a flap made from elastic cartilage tissue that is attached to the entrance of the pharynx. It stands open during breathing, allowing air in. During swallowing, it closes to prevent aspiration, forcing the swallowed liquids or foods to go down the esophagus instead. The pharynx is the part of the throat that is above the esophagus and the larynx. The larynx is a hollow muscular organ forming an air passage to the lungs and holding the vocal cords intact, also known as the voice box. The trachea connects the pharynx and the larynx to the lungs, allowing passage of air, also known as the windpipe. The trachea divides into two main bronchi, the left bronchus and the right bronchus. These bronchi branch into smaller secondary bronchi, which branch into smaller tubes known as the bronchioles. Bronchioles are the passageways by which air passes through to the alveoli. The bronchioles divide further into smaller terminal bronchioles, which then divide into even smaller respiratory bronchioles. Alveolar ducts are tiny ducts that connect the respiratory bronchioles to the alveolar sacs. Alveolar sacs contain pouches of alveoli that gather in clusters and blossom from the alveolar ducts. The pulmonary alveoli are the terminal ends of the respiratory tree. They are the tiny air sacs in the lungs where the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide take place.
In the respiratory system, there are two respiration functions. The first one is external and the second one is internal. The external deals with the breathing and the internal deals with the gas exchange, also known as cellular respiration, where carbon dioxide changes into oxygen, which is also called changing the ions. So when we deal with external, the mechanics of breathing, we usually have 4 steps. The first one, external, we deal with the mechanics of breathing. The mechanics of breathing usually has 4 steps. The first one, when we have to do with the lungs don't actually expand. The diaphragm does all the work, contracting caudally. As the diaphragm gets larger, creating an area of low pressure, allowing the air to rush into the lungs. Okay, so when we're talking about diffusion, we're talking about the air that carries higher or lower gas. When the air comes in, it has a higher oxygen level than what's already in the bloodstream that resides on the other side of the membranes in the lungs. Carbon dioxide level in the bloodstream is higher than the air that is being caught in the lungs. The exchanging of gases levels everything out to its normal level. So after that, when the diaphragm relaxes cranially to what looks like a flat dome shape, shrinking the area into the chest cavity, pushing out the air that is still in the lungs. More exchange will happen during this time when there is more carbon dioxide than oxygen in the lungs. So when the diaphragm shrinks, it makes an area of high pressure. After that, all these steps repeat over again. In the second part, when you inhale and exhale, this is where the gas exchange happens. There's 3 different parts when gas exchange happens. The first part, the second part, and the third part. This gas exchange happens between the alveolar capillaries and the alveolus. And this happens repeatedly when you inhale and exhale. So that's about it for the respiratory system.